Hi gang, the joy of football this week is going down different paths.
We've got a new section for you called One Trophy Wonders. Will Crystal Palace come into that category?
Explain That returns. The four clubs who have suffered consecutive relegations out of the Premier League and straight through the Championship or First Division as it was before that.
The Way We Were looks at Nottingham Forest.
Letter from the Gantry. Martin is been out socialising again.
And three of the best. We've got Southampton, Crystal Palace, Manchester United, Fulham, Leicester, and Crystal Palace.
We got Crystal Palace all through this. Let's go. The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks like Xavi! Rooney! Aguero!
The Joy of Football. Hello, the Joy of Football podcast with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett. It starts with a new segment, which actually, believe it or not, can carry on for several weeks. One Trophy Wonders. And of course, we're going to start with Crystal Palace. Martin, are they One Trophy Wonders now and for a long time? Or do you think you were there at the cup final?
Yeah.
Do you think they can follow this up?
Well, if you'd have asked anybody at around 6:30, 7 o'clock, they'd say yes, for sure. It was a heroic win. And I think the capacity of the club was shown by the volume of the support, the nature of the volume of the support, the decibel level of the volume of the support. Of course, it's a club with mixed history in terms of league positions. Strangely enough, the very first FA Cup tie that they played as a league club, they were a third division team, and they played an old first division team in the early 1920s. And that first division team was called Manchester City, and they beat them. And they haven't beat them. They played them later in the 20s and lost 11-4. That was a proper discrepancy between the teams. So the kind of symbolic, what goes around comes around for them to beat City in the final. I would say that they've got the right structure in place. At the moment, they've got an excellent coach, and he'll be in demand as well. What will happen to the players now? We saw Michael Elise getting sold. Are they a club that, like some others, has to sell a player at the end of each season? There'll be plenty of interest in plenty of their players.
Well, in Eze and Gahey, in Muniz, maybe in Mateta. Mateta, is that his name?
Yeah,
I'm suddenly thinking Arteta,
Yeah,
Mateta.
Who played a tremendous part in the game and in the cup run.
I mean, they've already lost one person, which isn't talked about a lot, is Dougie Freedman, the director of football. He's probably done more to put this squad together than anyone else who's come to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and with the blessing of the club, I must say, and recognise exactly what you're saying. So, of course, these are bumps in the road, aren't they? But if the road's leading in the right direction, then why not? It's speculative, isn't it? Yes, they will win something else. No, they won't. We don't know. They've got the tools at the moment to win the FA Cup, conceding one goal. That was in the whole run. That was amazing.
But you thought it was a sending off, the Dean Henderson.
Well, I did.
handball.
I did instinctively. I thought it because of denying a goal-scoring opportunity. But the word actually in the wording, and this is me reflecting on it, is that it's an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. I think you can make a case now, reflecting on it, that it wasn't obvious, even though it was Erling Haaland. But he was going. This is with the VAR. I actually, in my commentary position, you could hear the VAR. What they were saying was basically this: that it was going wide. He was going wide
on his right foot.
Well, that's another.
They
don't take that into consideration.
I mean, the thing is, everybody.
So now I don't think it was a sending.
That's grand, because I don't think it was quite, but
close.
But what I do think is that I think it would have ruined the game.
But you can't make decisions on that, can you?
Well, no, except that
we all know that people are swayed by this.
But I also think that one of the great problems with football officiating, and as you know, I think all officials are rubbish, and most of the laws of the game are nowhere near as good as they were 25 years ago. But one of the great problems with officiating is things are not 100%, 0%. They are often 60-40, 50-50, and they're more often that than they are 100-0. And this wasn't 100-0.
Well, no, if it had been 100-0, it would have been given by the on-field referee, wouldn't it? And I think that came into consideration as well. So I think everybody, I mean, if Manchester City said that's a stick-on sending off, we should have played against a 10-man reserve goalkeeper, etc. They had an hour after that, at least an hour at Crystal Palace, and they did.
Well, there was 10 minutes
added time, yeah,
something like that. So,
Yeah,
so I mean, it was 25th minute, I think, when it
yeah.
happened.
So I always, when I've been coaching, I always say to the players, I go ref this, and I says, what time was it? If it's the 93rd minute, yeah, you have a case. If it's anything further back, especially as far back as in the first half, we've had the opportunities to right the wrong if it was a wrong, and City did have that. And they couldn't make it stick. So.
I think they'll struggle to keep hold of Glasner because history tells you that when you win a trophy as a manager,
that's one of your theories, isn't it?
Yeah, you get the offers of a big job, where it'll be this summer or during the course of next season. I mean, he's won the Europa. Maybe he's got his sights on that again with Palace. But I think it's been a wonderful season of top flight football in England, even though the football itself hasn't been of the quality I think that it has in recent years.
Has been amazing.
But Newcastle winning their first domestic trophy for 70 years, even with that despicable political money behind it, and Crystal Palace winning their first ever trophy. I mean, and Manchester City struggling with that despicable.
Yeah, and that's not
money.
against City. It's the British way of loving the underdog. Yeah. And there's no doubt Palace were underdogs in the final. And when you get to be top dog, you have to live with the pressure that people want to knock you off.
And I think they made a lot of mistakes in the transfer market in the last couple of years, City, and they look slow. They look undynamic.
But they're not. They are not one trophy wonders, Neil. So
but Palace look, Palace look as though they're capable of taking on all the top dogs. Don't you think?
I do, and the cup run shows it. The way they recovered 3 points from the first 8 games. I mean, that was relegation, and that was a contrast to the way Glasner had finished. He'd only had a few months, of course, as a successor to Roy Hodgson, and but they finished so well under him. So it was such a surprise that they started badly.
And people tend to remember great individual goals in cup finals, but this was a great team goal.
It was, but it was the same goal that I've seen against in the semi-final, and also in the Manchester City game at the Etihad when they were 2-0 up. And it was the picture card playbook goal from Munoz. A great play by Mateta to hold it up the way he did and involve Munoz, and on the gallop and the cross. Yeah, you can poke holes in the defending, but the truth is that it was a great finish. And it's a cliche, isn't it? Because it's easy to say this, but it was a goal worthy of winning a cup final. Any goal is really if you win it, but it was slick. It was sweet as a nut, as they might say, south of the river.
Right, we're going to whip through 5 other one trophy wonders and just consider what the achievement was and what's happened since. And we're going to start with Birmingham City, who some people might say have won 2 trophies and shouldn't be in here because they won the League Cup.
Yeah, I'm one of those people, Neil.
Well, they won the League Cup before all clubs had to enter it. They won the League Cup before it got you a European place. It was, quite frankly, a trophy equivalent of the full Members' Cup in the 1980s and early 1990s. It was not relevant. And Birmingham won it by default because nobody else hardly entered it. When they won the League Cup in 2011 against the mighty Arsenal, it was a major, major achievement. With a team managed by Alex McLeish on its way to relegation from the Premier League. Simple question, really. I mean, why haven't Birmingham won more? Why? I think West Bromwich Albion aren't a one trophy club from Birmingham City, and obviously Aston Villa is the main club. But
well, you said something there that'll get some comments. That
yeah,
Birmingham City think they're the main club.
I know. Why haven't they won more?
Well, there've been difficult times. I've been at games where they've been relegated from the old First Division. They took Ron Saunders, who won the league with Aston Villa, and it didn't work for him. Alf Ramsey had a go, hadn't he? There's quite a few famous names, Trevor Francis, Steve Bruce, people like that. Difficult finances, but now they're good. I did a letter from the Gantry, didn't I, a few weeks ago. They've had a great season, though. They would have loved to have won at Wembley. They got beaten by Peterborough, who now have a better record at Wembley in terms of 100% wins than Woking, which is very disappointing. They're 5 out of 5, and Woking are 4 out of 4. My argument is all Wokings were at the old Wembley, so as far as the old Wembley is concerned, they've still got the best record. I think maybe 4 out of 4 also a small club called Barcelona as well at their Wembley record. Now honestly, Neil, they're in a great position now, I think, with Tom Wagner's ownership, Tom Brady on the board. I know that could be a bit of tokenism, but I think it's a bit more than that. He's showing his face and showing his faith. And the plans are great, and
they've bought the site to build a massive stadium, which is big talk in the second city, and they are a club who could go places, if the conditions were right, you'd imagine.
And I think having Villa in the same city and West Brom around the corner, I think that's great competition. Coventry's not far away, and they didn't quite achieve their targets, but they've had plenty of years in top flight football. And the Midlands tends to be forgotten a bit, and it shouldn't be, because there's a real passion for football there. And I can see Birmingham, although they're not on my list of one trophy wonders, I accept yours.
I went to that final, Birmingham Arsenal. And I went obviously with huge support in my heart for Birmingham on the day, because I didn't want Arsenal to win anything. We've got an Arsenal producer with us today, and you lot were in tears after that game, mate. I loved it.
I have to tell you that the producers want to be mic'd up for these shows, and you're only encouraging that. So
I felt that. I don't remember Birmingham as a team, the players. I don't remember anything from that game of Birmingham.
The final?
Yeah, they did. It was a goalkeeping error, I seem to remember, that got them the goal. And I just don't, that none of the players made
He'd hardly played Obafemi Martins. I seem to remember that he was an unlikely hero, but a hero he was. And it's now ticking off into the distance, isn't it? But in terms of our following the game, it's quite recent.
The next one is the year of my birth, Blackpool, 1953. The famous, arguably one of the most famous cup finals ever.
The Matthews Cup final, though Stan Mortensen got a hat trick.
But did he make 3 of the 4 goals? Didn't he get a hat trick of what you now call assists?
No, I don't think so.
No,
he made the winner for Bill Perry. He scored the other goal.
They were 3-1 down, Blackpool.
Yes, but Bolton had a player injured. No subs. The 50s is littered with Wembley finals ruined by injuries with no substitute. And it's one of the reasons, I've mentioned it on the podcast before, why they brought it in eventually. I think he was called Eric Bell, the Bolton player who got injured. I watched the game. I watched it on the television with my mum, who
was she supporting?
Bolton. She was, because she had a sister and 2 brothers, and they were all given teams to support by their sport-loving father, and she got given Bolton, so she was told to support Bolton. They were a big, powerhouse, Nat Losthouse and people like that. They were,
but the nation was behind Blackpool because of Stanley Matthews.
That is true. Yeah, that's true.
I saw Stanley Matthews.
You know why? Because he'd been in 2 other cup finals in recent 48 and 51, I think, where he'd been on the losing side, and now he was in his late 30s, which was, nobody knew he was going to play until his 50s then.
I saw him play in 1963, and he was still blessed with the ability to attack a fullback. And you could see that he'd have been a player in his past. But I'm not sure if he was the kind of player who would even be accepted now. He just got the ball and charged at the fullback and crossed
No,
it.
he slowed it down. He slowed it. It was slow, and then the change of pace was what did him. The wizard of the dribble, or the wizard of dribble, I think. That was his nickname for the whole of his career. And I met him and interviewed him late on in his life, and he talked a lot about the way his discipline allowed him to play into his 50s. And he did famously say, "I retired too young." And I get that. So Blackpool, well, financial problems since.
Should they have been? I mean, they had a couple of years, didn't they, in the Premier League? Should they?
1 year. Ian Holloway, manager.
So anyway, I'm sure I've been to the ground more than once with Chelsea.
Well, that was it. Well, we get the producers on it.
There you go. But anyway, should they have done better?
Charlie Adam was playing for them. I mean, people talk about Blackpool not as a sporting venue, as one of the great holiday resorts of the north, and the illuminations. I think it's a lovely place. It's great.
I prefer Morecambe.
One season.
Only one season.
Yeah, and there's only one tea in Craft, by the way.
There's only one man who gets these things right. So,
Yes. Well, I was covering it very closely, so there were some good games there as well. They were always in games, and Ian Holloway was just a great personality and remains that so as a football person today. So I don't think they were built to be more than that. All those clubs from that time, Preston, Blackpool, probably Burnley the exception from that part of the world, they all played a huge part. Blackburn, all played a huge part in the development of football, but it's overtaken them a little bit around the rest of the country. But Burnley back in the Premier League, so we can't put them in that envelope.
The next club we're going to is very much a one-trophy club, Oxford United, who I still remember getting into the Football League, I think.
They were Headington United, weren't they? Yeah. And Ron Atkinson and his brother Graham were part of that team that got them into the Football League. And the League Cup we're talking about in a time when everybody was invited into it.
Yes. Very much so. Yeah. They beat Queen's Park Rangers in the final. I think it was 3-0.
It was.
And what a side they had. John Aldridge, who went on to be a Liverpool legend, and Ray Houghton, who went on to be a Liverpool legend.
Excellent. Jeremy Charles, who was a good friend of the media. He was very chatty, from the famous Charles family, John Charles, Mel Charles. He was in that group as well. Yeah, they were very good, and they played really well on the day. I mean, it was perhaps not the final that you would have picked at the start of the season in terms of teams getting there, but Oxford United, QPR.
QPR knocked out Chelsea in the quarterfinals, and I was editor of the sports centre of the local newspapers across all of West London, so they were in my group as well as Chelsea, and their semi-final was against Liverpool, and they knocked out Liverpool in the semi-final, so they thoroughly deserved to be there.
Well, Liverpool had a reputation for signing players who played very well against them, and Ray Houghton would have come into that category. Yeah. John Aldridge would have come into that category as well. They know plenty about John.
He did get lots of goals, Aldridge, for them.
And I think we'll have a common theme about why these are one-trophy wonders. The stability on the pitch was wrecked by instability off it. And Oxford, of course, with losing the Manor Ground, which was a great place to watch football, and they've never quite clawed that back. I think there are still problems with where they're going to play in the future. So, but they. Getting into the Football League was a massive day for them, maybe even more massive than actually winning a major trophy.
And they're holding their own in the Championship now. Yeah. So things have looked worse in recent times.
There's a great mate of mine who's still working for the club and has done it under many managers, Derek Fazackerley, who worked with England for a time in Newcastle, Manchester City, who is a true football nut and a great coach. and great company.
Well, the guy I know there, of course, is Peter Rose Brown, who's been there forever, and ex-Chelsea, and he absolutely adores the club and the whole setup there.
He was doing the co-commentaries, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he still is, and he's an ambassador now. He's sort of changed roles. He was heading up their community work, but he's that. I think that they won it famously in '86 against their former manager Jim Smith, who had left them to go to Queen's Park Rangers. Who was one of the great personalities of football in the '80s and '90s, but it was a wonderful day out for their supporters and well deserved. Southampton, 1970s, when they were down in the old second division, beating Manchester United in the final.
Yeah, well, I went on the bus to Wembley with them, so I've got a very good recall of what happened. And they're of this list that really should have perhaps won more. They've been in other finals, of course. That quite recently they were in a League Cup final. Maybe should have beaten. There was a questionably offside goal prior to VAR in Manchester United beating them in the Zlatan final. But that was against the odds, of course. Manchester United weren't that long after relegation, and they come back up again. So it perhaps wasn't quite such a mismatch as it might look at when you say second division against Manchester United. But Southampton had some great players.
Well, I was going to say their legendary player at that stage was Mick Shannon.
Totally.
How good was he?
Very good. Very quick. Very eye for goal. Yeah, a forward, not really a centre forward as such, but an attacking player. But football was just his hobby. That was his greatest, because he's now still, I believe, a racehorse trainer of some merit. And he used to say to the manager, "Don't shout at me, it's only my hobby." Laurie McMenemy being the manager. And Mick was great, but he wasn't the only one that played so well for them. Peter Osgood, on the way towards the end of his career, played a big part. But they were a collective. They were greater than the sum of the individual parts. And I think Southampton probably should be the team of the South Coast, but now Bournemouth have eclipsed them, Brighton are eclipsing them at the moment, and they're back playing Portsmouth again, which is of course one of the great derbies.
Southampton became one of those clubs who sold all their best players and believed in their process of recruitment that they could replace them, but you can't do that forever.
They sold most of them to Liverpool as well, didn't they?
They did. And my theory when you do that, as I think Chelsea approved with Brighton, is that if you do that, Liverpool should have become Southampton, and Chelsea can't have almost become Brighton. But Liverpool didn't, and some of the players. I mean, Van Dijk is the most obvious one. But
I saw one of them at Everton. It's a strange, a conversation across, sort of half across the pitch. Adam Lallana, who grew up as an Everton fan.
Oh, did
I was trying to indicate whether he was being the last game at Goodison, whether he was going to go into the crowd he stayed in the Southampton dugout. He's helping Simon Russ in the interim management at the moment. So yes, that's been their downfall, I suppose. Not that the club has suffered. Of course, they've had changes of ownership as well, but that they have cashed in on the talent that they produce. But as you say, it doesn't happen every year. Although they've got one at the moment who I will be mentioning in my letter. Oh no, not in our three of the best.
Well, I mean, if you think of the players in the Premier League era who have shone, who started at Southampton, I mean, it's just extraordinary from Theo Walcott to
Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Gareth Bale, Luke Shaw, No, it has been. I think it's a great place to go and learn the game, but Southampton fans won't want to be remembered for that.
No.
But their supporters have been very good this season. It's been a really wretched season for them. And a year ago, I was at Wembley just watching the game as a neutral, watching Southampton play Leeds for the right to play in the Premier League. And now Leeds are in the Premier League and Southampton aren't. What a difference a year makes.
And our final team, who are going to come into the next segment as well, Luton, who won the League Cup, of course, again in the late 1980s, and the previous podcast when we had David Pleat on talking about life at Luton as well as life at Tottenham. Luton, that was a great achievement. That whole era of Luton in the top flight, given the size of the ground, given the resources, was a little bit like Crystal Palace.
Given the plastic pitch.
Yeah,
that might have helped.
Yeah, but Crystal Palace have had a period of really strong recruitment. As Southampton have had a period now of really weak recruitment. Luton in the 80s with the Steen brothers and Ricky Hill.
Lots of Steens. They didn't all play for Luton, but there was a big family from not very far away up the M1 a bit, I think. Paul Walsh was obviously, he and Brian Steen played together for England, I think, in one game, didn't they? Steve Foster, strong, Mal Donaghy, people like that. Definitely of its time, very competitive. I think Manchester United under Ron Atkinson won 10 or 11 games at the start of the season, and the game that they've dropped points in for the first one was Luton away. And which tells you, that how good Luton were, and David Pleat played a massive role in it.
And when they finally won something, it wasn't a shock. A bit like Crystal Palace in a way this season. I don't think it was a shock. People thought that they were getting good enough to do something like that.
Yeah, I heard Tony Adams on the radio only last week on his Desert Island Disc saying that after they lost the final to Luton, he and Niall Quinn went back to Quinny's flat in Enfield, I think it was, and they watched The Life of Brian over and over again with the song "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life," and they needed that injection of good spirit to get back on track, because Arsenal were favourites. I think they were the holders, weren't they? And then they'd beaten Liverpool the year before, and Luton came up trumps here.
Brilliant. Okay, one trophy wonders, and we'll come back to that because there's a surprising number. But we move on to the return of an old friend. Explain that. 4 clubs have suffered consecutive relegations from the Premier League and then the Championship / First Division, depending on what it was called at the time. So this is since 1992, obviously, of which the latest, of course, is Luton. As we've just been talking about Luton, down at 2024 from the Premier and now 2025 from the Championship. The other 3 are Swindon, 1994 and 1995, Wolverhampton Wanderers, 2012 and 2013, and Sunderland, 2017 and 2018. I think we can say with some confidence that Luton and Swindon both overachieved in getting up to the Premier League. Is that fair?
Yes. I mean, I saw Luton lose a playoff final to get out of the National League to AFC Wimbledon 10 or 12 years ago, wasn't it now? It played in Manchester, the Etihad. And Luton, that was, we're still in the non-league team. Which was a strange thing, but they're not the only club from the Football League who have found themselves in the National League.
Which is why when Chelsea went there in this one season up, and our arrogant supporters were singing Champions of Europe, you'll never sing that. And they came back with Conference Champions, you'll never sing that. They are the best supporters in the country. I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. I thought they were very unlucky to get relegated from the Premier League. So I must say, I've only watched them once live this season when they lost 2-0 at Watford. And they were in the mire then. And that didn't help, especially losing a local derby. Clearly, they've had change of management. It's the things that can go wrong. I mean, the heart scare and
the captain.
In the Premier League season, big scare. Things like that do hit at the core of the core of a club.
Tom
Lockyer. Yeah,
Tom Lockyer,
yeah. And he,
that was a big loss.
Yeah, well, it was, and the sort of incident that puts football into perspective, So sometimes it's hard to. It seems a strange thing to say, but you can get on a roll of wins. You win whatever happens.
They lost a lot of games in the last minute.
Yeah, and they got into that mentality. And actually, it's not something we can go into now, really. But the number of games since the boards have been up with these extra minutes, the way the game is played in added time, makes that much more likely to happen because teams are prepared to take a risk over what they know is a short-term period. They've got some bearings in terms of the timing of the match. So I do sympathise with them. They're a very good club. They were very hospitable to us. We interviewed David Pleat in the stadium.
Loved going there.
Yeah, you do. Is there a farm shop anywhere near?
No, there's not. Oh. No, but there's a road full of Indian supermarkets.
The Asian dishes that you like as well.
Swindon, completely against the odds, got up to the Premier League under the gifted management of Glenn Hoddle, who walked out, left them when they got up to the top flight. Very sensibly came to Chelsea and took over our club. But Swindon therefore went into the Premier League under new management, or the assistant took over.
John Gorman.
And they just didn't have the players, did they?
No, they had some good players. Jan Arge Fjortoft, I see from time to time. He was a big TV person. Actually, he's Norwegian, but he works for German television as well. He's everywhere. I saw him at the cup final.
Mickey Hazard, of course, from Tottenham and Chelsea midfielder they
had. They let in a lot of goals, and they tried to play.
Yeah.
John had a nice
bit like
philosophy
Southampton.
And they were trying to meet fire with fire, but I'm afraid they didn't like the match, and so it was one of those seasons, and that was when it was still 42 games, so your weaknesses are going to be exposed even more over the longer campaign.
So the two clubs that really shouldn't have gone down in consecutive years were Wolves and Sunderland, and to me they both have a similar complete cock-up mentality, which is owners not knowing what they were doing and managers not being given a chance. So Mick McCarthy had taken Wolves into the Premier League. He was manager from 2006 to 2012. They were struggling. They panicked. They sacked him. They gave the job to his assistant, Terry Connor, for 3 months. Didn't work, got relegated. They then brought in Ståle Solbakken, a Norwegian coach that nobody had heard of amongst the Wolves players. They sold players like Matt Jarvis, friend of the Joy of Football podcast, but they sold a lot of their best players when they went down, and they struggled. They sacked Solbakken, who also Mick McCarthy had played a get in your faces Brentford type of football, if you like, and Solbakken played a back off counter-attack kind of football, and they didn't have the players to do it. So they brought in Dean Saunders in the second half of the season as manager, and it was too late. They went down again, and in the third tier they brought in Kenny Jackett, who worked them back up. But at Sunderland it was the same thing. David Moyes was the manager, believe it or not, the year they were getting relegated. They sacked him and brought in Simon Grayson. That didn't work, and they finished up going down. And then the following season, in the second tier, they brought in Chris Coleman. This is 2017-18. In 2016, he was the legend who took Wales to the semi-finals of the Euros. So, but they got relegated again. And it's just...
And all captured on camera, wasn't it? It was one of the first behind-the-scenes documentaries of that. That can backfire, although it's compelling viewing, and that's the I suppose for the TV companies it was great, but for the club it was terrible. I'm not sure. Sunderland up, back and down. We don't know as we speak whether they're coming back up again. Wolves were in the 4th division, before the Premier League started. So it's not. And yet I grew up. Really, my first love of football started in the 1950s when I was very little. And Wolves were the top dogs. Winning
the biggest club in the country.
Yeah, and the pioneers in European football and stuff like that. So I think we have to accept these things. In the 1960s, Northampton Town went from the 4th division to the 1st division, the Premier League of its day, and back down again. And it was great fun. And, I don't think they expected to stay up, but they enjoyed the journey. I think now, the one thing you do hear, Sheffield United aren't mentioned in this, but, I've got some friends who are big Sheffield United fans, and somehow they're finding, no, they could go back up again. Again, obviously Sunderland will have their say in that. But in the Championship, no VAR, chance of winning a lot more games. There is, from the fans' point of view, it's not always about the glory that we're looking at the stats and saying, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. These clubs are... Do you remember when the Premier League started, they were going to talk about Premier League 2, and that's never quite happened, has it? But you certainly would find Wolves obviously now back in the Premier League. Sunderland would have been in a Premier League 2 for a period around the time. Swindon's different matter. Woking beat Swindon on the way to the 3rd round in 2018-19 season at Swindon. So that would have been a bad day for them. And when actually in the dressing room was saying, well, we've beaten the club that's been in the Premier League, so which came as a badge of honour, really. So I can't explain that really. There are financial things, football things. I think specifically, I don't think you can throw a blanket over all of them and say that's because of this specific reason. Maybe financial, but there are lots of other factors as well.
I do feel, when you go to Wolves and when you go to Sunderland, that there should be Premier League clubs. Now, you can say that about more than 20 clubs.
Yes.
But there's a lot of clubs in the Premier League that you wouldn't say it about who are wonderfully overachieving, of whom obviously
I think that's
Bournemouth and
our
Brentford.
age. We've got young viewers and listeners who expect Crystal Palace to be in the top flight, and it's 13 seasons now.
Well, Palace haven't.
And they've won the FA Cup.
No,
so,
they should be in there. They've got a 30,000 capacity.
Would you have said that? Maybe in the past you would. Maybe the team of the 80s, Terry Venables.
Well, the team of the 70s with Steve Kember and
but that was the first time they got up. Was it late 60s or late 70s?
Yeah.
Bert Head was the manager.
Yeah.
Oh, Bert Head. He was from Swindon, I think. So, and he was great. The managers were suited and not football booted then. They weren't on the training ground all the time, but it was a great achievement, and they were a good team to watch. Really good team to watch. Don Rogers was also Swindon, so we're going around in circles here. Right, he had the defenders going around in circles, that's for sure.
So I Wolves and Sunderland, I just feel have a Premier League vibe when you go there, and they should be there all the time. And the fact that they got doubly relegated means they mucked up. Right, we move on and bringing back another of our old segments, The Way We Were. And this is where we look at a team getting relegated, which is what happened to Nottingham Forest in 1999, and now in just their is this second or third season? Second season back in the third season. Third season back in the Premier League. Since then, they're in Europe. They're going to qualify for Europe. What went wrong at Forest and what's gone right? Again, I look at their managers. I'm going to run through these. I'm going to bore everybody stupid, but I'm going to run through these.
I just want to remind everybody that this podcast is called The Joy of Football. We seem to be concentrating a lot on failure at the moment, and that's not the joy of it
Well,
it is
for everybody else. That's tribalism. Brian Clough was manager from 1975 to 1993. Now, they went down in Clough's last season in charge, and he clearly lost it a bit. But I think they suffered from post-Busby, post-Ferguson, post-Wenger type experience when Clough left.
Well, they were third in the Premier League a couple of years later.
Well, they were. Well, this is what happened. Frank Clark took over 1993
player.
to 96. And I think it was at the end of his time, was it, that they came third? Stuart Pearce, 96 to 97. He was actually a player.
Well, as Frank was
player
too,
manager.
the left-back connection.
Yeah, but he was an ex-player, Clark. Pearce was still playing.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did when he took over as caretaker.
Dave Bassett, the former Wimbledon manager, 97 to 99. Ron Atkinson, just for a period in 99. David Platt, I forgot that he was manager for 2 years, 1999 to 2001, former England hero in the 1990 World Cup. Paul Hart, 2001 to 2004. Joe Kinnear for a few swearing months in 2004. Gary Megson, 3 at the back, 2005 to 2006. Colin Calderwood, 2006 to 08. Billy Davis, the first of 2 spells, 2009 to 2011. Steve McLaren for a few months in 2011. Steve Cottrell, who managed many a lower league club, 2011 to 12. Sean O'Driscoll for a few months in 2012. Alex McLeish, who won the League Cup in 2011 with Birmingham, got sacked by Villa the following season, 2012 to 2013. Billy Davis back 2013-14. Stuart Pearce back 2014-15. Dougie Friedman, who we've mentioned as the guy who was the director of football at Palace, who recruited so brilliantly, he did 2015-16. Philip Montagnier, 2016-17. Mark Warburton, 2017. Ita Karanka, 2018-19. Martin O'Neill went back, former player, never managed with them, 2019 with Roy Keane, I think, as his assistant. Sabri Lamucci, 2019-20. Chris Hughton, 2020-21. And Steve Copper, 2021-23. Steve Cooper, that's my writing, who got them promoted back into the Premier League, and now Nuno Espirito Santo. I mean, it's a lot of managers.
I used the word earlier, instability, and maybe overinflated expectations. I don't know. I don't think so, because it's a long time since Cloughie's days. But you know, it's still amazing. The thing, going back into Europe, they were in Europe in the mid-1990s.
They had some great players
after they finished third in the Premier League, and. Yeah, you can't think of Forest.
Teddy Sheringham, Stan Collymore.
Yeah.
They had Pierre Van Hooijdonk. They had Ian Woan. They had some terrific. Was he there? Yes, he was. They had some terrific players.
He was in the Cloughie. I think he was involved in the cup final, wasn't he? And when they lost to Spurs, 91, Cloughie was still in charge. But I mean, for them to win, you know, people, we have to call it the Champions League these days, but it was the European Cup back then, and that only champions were involved, and they won it twice. And that, well, they weren't champions the second time, but they won it, so they went in as European Cup holders, and they did it spectacularly, efficiently, pragmatically, and they were, talk about punching above your weight, you know. And Brian Clough was a genius in his time of management. So whether they'll get that kind of run back to it, I don't know. We don't know where they're going to finish yet, which competition they're going to be in. So well, they've had a fantastic season from being survivors. And Steve Cooper did a great job getting them promoted and keeping them in the Premier League. And Nuno did the same thing, and now he's kicked on, and the players they're a fabulous team without the ball. It's a great quality there.
Yeah, they are. But I also think they're a fabulous story, which promoted teams ought to look at. And these promoted teams that come up and think they're going to play football against the best players in the world, Southampton, Ipswich, Burnley the previous time. Steve Cooper came up and defended his penalty area.
Well, Leicester should have kept Steve Cooper at the start of this season, because it wouldn't have been particularly enthralling, but it would have been, I'm sure they would have stayed up if he'd been kept. And
you develop from there, which is what they've done. And they've signed Elanga, and they've signed Hudson-Odoi, and they've signed Anderson, and they've signed Gibbs-White, and they've become a team with creative.
Well, they've spent some money, and then they've got an owner. A lot of this, all this stuff that we've gone through in this podcast, is to do with ownership. I mean, the teams, and stability. Crystal Palace have got that now, and we started our show with them, and it looks like for all his controversial behaviour from time to time, that Marinakis is driving them in the right direction. He shares the ambitions that the fans share, and it's a very happy club to visit, I have to say. The support is wonderful, the noise, even the location. I was thinking about Everton and their new ground's going to be on the Mersey. Well, Forest are on the Trent.
Yeah.
And it's if you get there early enough, it's lovely ground to look at from the outside and its location. So it's all going well. Whether they're quite going to get what they thought they would get a few weeks ago, we'll see. They're still in the hunt for a Champions League place, and there's a small London club they've got to play at home in their last game.
I'll be there.
Which will determine a lot for both of those clubs. So good luck to Forest. I say it's always been the story's always been how you get on the Gantry.
When Brian Clough,
always worth getting on the Gantry.
When Brian Clough took it over, they were, of course, in the second tier.
Yeah.
And he won promotion in third place, and then won the league the following season and the European Cup the next 2 seasons.
I saw his first game.
Yeah.
It wasn't a league game. They were second division. Forest away to an FA Cup replay against Tottenham. Obviously, they're a top division team, and Cloughy won it. Started with
Are they essentially a second tier outfit with a good top tier record, as opposed to the Sunderlands and the Wolveses, or should they be a long-term Premier side?
I think they should be a long-term Premier side. I do. When we floated that sort of thought of Premier League 2, when it was floated at the time, Forest weren't in the Premier League, it would have been, oh yeah, they'll be in that next batch. But I do think the way the club has developed now, and it's one of those grounds that still looks like it did when I first started going there, and it retains the atmosphere. It's just a bit of a victim of the weather. Even the other week, I'm trying to think who they were playing. There was suddenly a thunderstorm at half time. But I think I mentioned this in the past, that I went to 3 different games of FA Cup replays against Crystal Palace, who seemed to crop up everywhere in this show, in the early 1990s. And the game was postponed 3 times for 3 different weathers: fog, frost, and waterlogged.
That's what you get when you're on the river.
Yeah, I suppose it is. Yeah. But they're on the rise and back into Europe.
I think it's a brilliant achievement. There you are. Joy. Brilliant achievement.
Finally, Neil. Yes.
Right. Still to come, letter from the Gantry and 3 of the best. If you're enjoying this, subscribe. If you're not, why are you listening? Let's move on to Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry.
Letter from the Gantry.
Thanks, Neil. The penultimate weekend of the 24-25 English football season produced a stunning reminder of the essential part of the game we love so much, played by supporters. Fans fuel football. They are pillars of the clubs they worship, the communities they represent, the boroughs they bind together. They are not customers who might choose another brand for their sporting shopping. Theirs is a lifetime commitment. Look at the passion the Eagles faithful gave Crystal Palace at Wembley in the FA Cup final and the semi as well. Selhurst Park, with a capacity of around 25,000, is not big enough to showcase the breadth of the backing that filled their allocation in the National Stadium. It indicated that they are a bigger club than you might think. South London is still resonating to the sounds of Glad All Over and Oliver's Army. It was third time lucky for Palace, and I've commentated on all 3 of their finals. They scored first each time, and against Manchester City, it was the earliest they'd taken the lead. Eberechi Eze's goal after 16 minutes, just ahead of Gary O'Reilly after 18 minutes in 1990, and well ahead of Jason Puncheon, 78 minutes in 2016. In the end, both those games went to extra time, and in the former, a replay. On both occasions, Palace finished runners-up, beaten by Manchester United. Even though there were 10 added minutes to the 90 against Manchester City, the Glasner Group remained steadfast to become the 45th different club to win the FA Cup. Remarkably, the early goal, right out of the Palace playbook, was enough and left City sad all over. Television captured the tension of those extra minutes perfectly via the agony on the faces of the fans, particularly the number one supporter, both emotional and financial, Steve Parish, the club chairman. No one deserves the current accolades more than Steve. Joel Ward, a good friend of the joy of football, got to raise the FA Cup at the end of his 13 years of splendid service to the South London club, to the deafening soundtrack of supporters who'd experienced nothing like it in the club's 120-year history. Joel now linked forever with the club's first major trophy. 12 hours after leaving Wembley, I was parking up outside Goodison Park to witness another occasion made amazing by those who invest so much of their time and money in following their favourite team. Nowhere in football quite matches Merseyside for sentiment and extrovert emotion, and the Evertonians have been polishing up their passion for the end of an era at the stadium which has been the club's base for almost 133 years. Yet it wasn't the final farewell, thanks to Everton's new owners, the Friedkin Group. To their great credit, they've recognised Goodison Park's pivotal place in the club's community. They've not just spared demolition, but they will give it a makeover as a hub primarily for the Everton women's squad. No wrecking ball, there will be football. Maybe even those who made the decision didn't realise how appropriate it was. Back in 1920, Goodison staged a ladies' game with a huge crowd. But a year later, fearing this uprising in popularity, the FA decreed that football was not appropriate for females and banned women from playing anything but kickabouts, a ban which lasted 50 years. But it is the end of men's senior football in this boisterous but venerable venue, and the current team marked it with a win. Only their fifth at home in Goodison's goodbye season. Unjai enjoyed the day in particular, scorer of the penultimate and the last Goodison goals. Iliman living up to his dressing room nickname of Skillyman. The midday kickoff allowed plenty of time for a post-match celebration, a closing ceremony of appropriate words and music, with around 80 ex-players in attendance. I shared commentary duties with the excellent Leon Osman, who scored 26 Premier League goals in the stadium and is Everton to his core, and he was able to dash across to join the Toffees' returning heroes. So Goodison Park, the grand old lady, will have a quieter life, but does live on, which I must admit, even for a neutral, was a comforting thought as I headed back home.
I thought it was brilliantly done by Everton. It was. I was glued to my television screen in floods of tears as they all came out, and some of them looked really good. I was amazed at the 1960s players who were still going and striding out the first.
Derek Temple, who scored the winner in the '66 Cup final when they'd been 2-0 down to Sheffield Wednesday.
I was there.
Yeah, you were.
I was at that cup final. Yes, yeah.
Mike Trebilco.
Yeah, 2 goals.
Yeah, he scored the first.
Cornish.
Two. Yes.
Great occasions. But
they did it. They did it very well, and I think the fact that it was a midday kickoff really helped.
Yeah.
Because they had, the length of the celebrations was appropriate for the length of time that Goodison Park had been a men's venue.
And the commentary on TNT said, which I didn't realise, that there'd be more games played at that stadium, more official league games or official games played at that stadium, not league, all competitions, than at any other stadium in England. Quite extraordinary.
Yeah, when you can't think the World Cup
was there.
England should have played the semi-final there, but the FA wangled it. They could go to Wembley.
But I mean, it showed how big Everton was, that Goodison Park was considered a more appropriate stadium than Anfield.
And Eusebio, who famously scored 4 goals in a comeback win for Portugal over North Korea, said it was the greatest stadium that he'd ever played in.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I presume outside is home.
And I was reminded as the teams walked out, Everton and Southampton, for the kickoff, and they showed it, that it is such a pre-Premier League stadium, and it's never been a Premier League stadium, which has held Everton back because there's not even room in the tunnel for the 2 players, the 2 teams to walk out side by side. They've got to walk out. This is, for people not listening, I've got one hand in front of the other. They've almost got to walk out alternately.
One of on the corner, one of the in the tunnel, and come down the dressing rooms, then turn the corner. they turned left to go out onto the pitch. One of my most embarrassing moments in my television career, I was the interviewer. I can't remember who Everton were playing, but they had a celebrity guest that they wanted me to interview for some reason. This is working for ITV. Some reason they wanted me to interview in the players' tunnel. And it was a lady named Koo Stark.
Oh, I remember Koo Stark.
Yes, who was sort of
Well endowed.
a glamorous lady, but had connections as to who she was going to. Everyone was who's she going to marry or who's she dating. Anyway, we're in the corner. The players are going to turn in front of us down. Oh, yeah. Well, you can imagine what the players were like. And this, why, if we did it there at all, why did we do it when the players came out?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose they got the effect that they wanted. The players had no thoughts of playing a game of football on their minds for a few seconds as they walked past us. I don't think it will go into... well, it will probably be bottom of the list of all the interviews I've done down the years in terms of quality and composure. She smiled and looked beautiful, so that was all that mattered, really. So that's one personal memory of the Everton tunnel. It's a shame you raised it, but I hope it's not out there anyway on the internet.
Everton, yeah, well done. Done well. And look forward to the new stadium. Okay, letter from the Gantry, which of course you can read Martin's letters from the Gantry on substack.com, where we're called The Joy of Football as well. Martin, all his very positive letters from the Gantry and all my very negative musings on football as well. We move on.
You have to have the pain to have the gain, by the way. So.
Oh, I've had a lot of that. 3 of the best.
And he makes them pay.
3 of the best. He's made them pay. And that completes a wonderful hat-trick.
Right. Last segment of this podcast. Young player, old player, young player.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Southampton at Goodison. Tyler Dibling played. And we've mentioned him before, and he's not going to be a Premier League player next season unless he gets the chance to move. And I would say he will get the chance to move. Whether he wants to move, it's another matter. He could be a Matt Letizia. He's loyal to Southampton.
Because he did move as a 16-year-old.
For 2 games for Chelsea.
To Chelsea youth, to Chelsea's academy. He was a substitute twice. He never started a game. Yeah. And then he said he was homesick and Chelsea agreed to let him go back.
Yeah, which was a nice gesture from their point of view, particularly as he's turned out to be the player that he is. But he's played more minutes in the Premier League than any other teenager this season.
Really?
Yeah, which is...
and he's played well, despite them being...
Yeah, he won both penalties that Southampton managed to gain so far. They've still got one more game to go as we speak. And they were both missed, although one of them was scored on the rebound. But they were against Manchester United and Liverpool. He won penalties. But he's a player. I mean, for older viewers and listeners, he's Chris Waddle. He is. He comes in.
His hair's getting that way as well.
Yeah, the hair as well. Yeah. So, but he's lovely to watch, and I hope not for Southampton's sake, but I hope he gets maybe he'll have a year with Southampton. They'll get back in the Premier League, but. And that's the way things seem to be at the moment. But he's lit up a really wretched season for the Saints, and the fact that he's been able to continue to perform and not been weighed down by the disappointment week after week after week. So he's my young player. My
players this week are all about 2 clubs, Crystal Palace and Manchester United. And I've got 2 young players, Adam Morton and Kobe Mainoo, who play in the same position.
Mainoo.
Kobe Mainoo.
Kobe
Mainoo. Sorry, Kobe. Who both were central to their clubs beating Manchester City in an FA Cup final in consecutive seasons. And both got high praise for their performances, and both deserved it. I saw Adam Morton play for Blackburn in a League Cup tie at Stamford Bridge. And what stood out to me about him then, for some reason, was his name and not his performance. And I was quite surprised when he was signed by Crystal Palace. And I saw him play a couple of times for Crystal Palace, and I wasn't overwhelmed with him. But he got into the England squad, and I know you really admired him in his early Palace days. He got into the England squad and went to the Euros. Kobbie Mainoo got much more praise and much more recognition for his Manchester United performances. And our Manchester United producers were wetting themselves with anticipation at his potential. But every time I saw him, I thought he was a little bit, I wanted more from him. I thought there was too much the game where he was a bit anonymous. But in the FA Cup final, when he scored and played outstandingly, he really looked the real deal. So we go to the Euros, and he gets into the Euros team after the Trent Alexander-Arnold midfielder experiment hadn't worked, and he has a highly respectable Euros. But I was always, hang on, these are kids. Things change, development happens at different pace, and you don't know what's around the corner. You got to keep everything in the right direction, work your nuts off, and hope that your prospects go up. Kobbie Mainoo's not had a good season on that count. He's not been helped by the change of management. He's not been helped by being played out of position. He's not been helped by injury. But Adam Wharton has finished the season with a performance in the FA Cup final that was every bit as outstanding for me as Kobbie Mainoo.
So the reason he's your young player is you're relating him to Adam Wharton, not because he's played very well the last few weeks.
I'm saying that development of youngsters is something that isn't a straight road. I think they've both got the potential to be outstanding players, but they both have to have everything that it takes for the next 3 or 4 years to be outstanding players. And Wharton having an outstanding cup final and an outstanding second half of the season since he's come back from injury.
We can link Palace's improvement when he plays they're a better side.
But it doesn't mean he's going to be a great player. And Mainoo having a poor season related to last season doesn't mean he's going to be a failure, is what I'm saying. And
we are talking before the Europa League final.
Yeah, and I look at them both in the same light, and it's just great that they've had their moments and they can have more. But it doesn't mean they will have more, which is why football's so fascinating. Old player.
I've got a bunch. I'm taking the leaf out of the Neil Barnett, 3 of the best. In terms, I've picked the Fulham 1975 Cup final players, ex-players. I went to
50th anniversary.
I went to the reunion at the 50th anniversary. I was invited because I was lucky enough to be the reporter and the team coach, so I was sort of on the inside. And coming back were Peter Mellor, the goalkeeper, who's been living in America for years, John Fraser, who had to play at left back because Les Strong, who was also there, was injured. Who played they had 12 games in that run. They played 4s and 2 replays. But Hull City, Nottingham Forest 4 times. I think Hull City 3. Anyway, Les played in 11 of the 12, but missed the final, but got a medal and was given a medal eventually. So Les was there as well. John Cutbush played at right back. John Lacey, the centre half, who had me in his pocket in a couple of non-league games, and John Mitchell, who scored the semi-final winner. Alan Mullery, of course, perhaps the most famous of the survivors. Bobby Moore was in the team as well. God rest his soul. And Mullers was there, and it was great. It was I have to say this publicly because I've said it privately. ITV dug out some amazing archive footage none of us had seen before, including footage of us on the bus, which Fulham were able to show the players, and it was astonishing. I mean, in my case, it's pretty horrendous to watch it back, but the players loved it. And
they were a second division team, second outfit.
They were a second division team, yeah.
Final.
And funnily enough, and we didn't know this at the time, on the night, there was another anniversary going on, 50 years, across in Essex, where West Ham, who won the final, were having their celebration, and so
Did ITV have a reporter on their bus?
I don't think so, because I don't think West Ham were the kind of club to allow it. I think John Lyle was quite a strict manager, but Fulham, it was banter. I listening to it back now, I mean, we're talking about Peter Mellor, the big eater, the goalkeeper, where he said, "Oh, we're going to stop for a takeaway Chinese on the way in the bus." You know, those sort of things were being said. And John Lacey was his hair out of place because he was known for being very well coiffured, you know. And I was asking questions like that, and I thought, it seems so disrespectful these days. But then I was the same age as the players, so
and they weren't on
wasn't so
television
difficult.
every week.
No, but it was treated, and I went back to it was Dickie Davis and Brian Moore were hosting from Wembley, and they were, after the bits on the bus, they were going, well, they seem very relaxed. With watching it from 2025 eyesight and editorial judgment, it was a bit glib. But I said to Bobby Moore, "You're playing West Ham, his old club." I said, you're playing West Ham, what do you think? And he said, do you, yeah, he said, I'm sure, I'm really pleased they're there. But Bobby was a diplomat and perfect, and I was quivering with nerves during the interview, but he was cool as a cucumber, as he always was. And so he said, yeah, I'm really pleased West Ham are there. And I said, do you think they'll sort you out? Which meant, do you think they know enough about you to perhaps capitalise on do they know too much about you, basically? But what I actually said was, do you think they'll sort you out? I just can't believe that I said that. And Bobby went, no, I think I'll be okay. I know a few things about them, remember? And this was played in this at the cottage in this banqueting suite, and so it was great for the players. But they were lovely and great to see them all fantastic people, all fine footballers in their day, and they bonded back together. I'm sure it's the first time many of them said. Peter's been in America a long time. So it was super, and then they were all invited to the Everton game the next day, and in the end I was there as well, and we were still there. Like we stayed longer than the game was. We left about 7:30. It was such a nice thing. So, if you don't mind me embracing them all together, the Fulham 1975 reunion. They're my old players, and they're quite old.
Especially Alan Mullery.
Yeah, in his 80s, yeah.
And he still does Brighton hospitality.
He goes to Brighton. To get him to go to Fulham, actually, it was quite a feat, because he lives near Brighton.
My old player is Mark Bright. Mark Bright, who many people will know more as a television reporter, a football reporter and what have you, after his playing days than from his playing days. But what a player Mark Bright was. Never actually played for England, did he? But he sort of came into the big time at Leicester, where he struggled for first team time behind Gary Lineker and Alan Smith. But he did partner Gary Lineker quite a lot in those days. Then in '86, Crystal Palace bought him when they were in the second tier, I think. And he finished up, of course, right and bright, with one of the great forward partnerships of top flight football. I mean, it was absolutely.
We talked about the 1990 Cup final. Of course, they were there as a pairing. Although Wrighty came on as a sub because he'd been injured and scored the 2 goals that made it a replay. And
they were such a good partnership. Such a good partnership. He left Palace and went to Sheffield Wednesday, who at the time were a top side, a European team, and played in the 1993 League Cup and FA Cup final. They lost both to Arsenal, one of only 2 occasions in the history of cup football that the 2 cup finals have been against the same teams.
Yeah, I know you're going to tell me the other one.
Liverpool and Chelsea in 2022. Yep. But that Sheffield Wednesday team, they came 7th that season in what was the first season.
That went to a
Premier
replay
League.
Again, didn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Like the Palace one.
Yeah, and they had some top players. Trevor Francis was the manager, of course. But Mark Bright was a really good player. And he became, I thought, a really good football journalist for many years. But somehow, I'm not quite sure what happened. The Crystal Palace chairman, Steve Parish, took him on as his assistant, and he's become a Crystal Palace. You wouldn't call him an ambassador because he's more involved than that.
He has specific jobs. I think he's doing the loan management at the moment, which is a job looking after the players Palace have out on loan.
And he does. He's involved in recruitment and getting youngsters in and everything.
He's always on the circuit. You see him, and he had tears in his eyes when the final whistle went at the 2025 Cup final, and I thought, that's how much he's given to Crystal Palace. And it was after wiping, bless him.
But he was the kind of centre forward that you'd have loved.
Oh, the kind of centre forward I'd like to have been. Goodness me, yeah. A handful and gifted and a really, really nice man. And always got time for you. And you do see him. I mean, obviously part of my life is in non-league football, and you do see him at games.
Do you?
Yeah, he's always looking for talent. If he's heard about a player, and then occasionally he's rung up and said, "Can you get me a ticket at Woking or something like that?" Not that he needs to do anything other than turn up, but he's really kept. Some people do go into that ambassadorial role, but he's much, much more than that. And he had a good career on the radio. There may be some reason why maybe Palace was a more attractive thing, and I can understand that when you've been a player. So he's whatever he's done, playing, reporting, and now involved in the management, the administration of the club, excellent.
And a good night out. I can vouch for that. Player this week.
Well, I've been really lucky in the last few weeks. I've been really lucky for the last 50 years, to be honest with you. That I got a call from Leicester City saying, would you like to go and interview Jamie Vardy? We'd like you to go and interview Jamie Vardy for his farewell week. So I did it a couple of weeks ago. We met in Melton Mowbray, home of the Pies. Also the home of a cinema where we were sat down together, Jamie and I, and it was the goals were put on the screen so we could see them and talk about them. And he was absolutely welcoming. He was really happy to do it. He'd been interviewed all day at the ground, and so he came out of his way out of Leicester to do this at the club's request. So and we talked with the cameras rolling, we talked when the cameras weren't rolling, and he made me very welcome. It was a privilege to, at this stage of such a great career, such a wonderful journey, and the connection with non-league. Every non-league footballer would want a journey like Jamie Vardy has had, and I couldn't have been happier. You were the person who told me, actually, I was driving back from Everton, you told me he'd got his 200th goal. And I was so chuffed. It couldn't have been timed better, really. And he got all the accolades that he should. And
can I just say, this is a house phone. I haven't heard a house phone ring for about 2 centuries. We're in Martin's kitchen.
Yes. And I've been in this house for 35 years. And you can tell by the ringtone, can't you, really? And it might be Jamie Vardy ringing to say thanks for the mention, but I don't think it will be.
He'd phone you on your mobile.
He wouldn't. No, We've always gotten well. I've been there, obviously, at some of his great moments, and I think that's why Leicester asked me to do it. But it was really it was a lovely day. I did bring home I went by train, and I brought home 2 Melton Mowbray pies. They're
huge,
big, They're not your little pork pie. I got one which had black pudding in it, and one which had sort of cheese, cheddar, Stilton cheese, woven into it. And I got on the train Melton Mowbray to Leicester. I'm thinking, I could take these pies home, and then on the train to London, I started to get hungry, and so I turned myself into the corner of my seat and started to munch away at the black pudding Melton Mowbray pork pie, and that was Not quite the best part of the day, because talking to Jamie was certainly that, and his good lady was there as well, and then but it just sort of topped it off, and so that I can talk about food to you, Neil, for the first. Well, we're 61 in the podcast, is it? Yeah. 61. It's the first time I've talked about my culinary expertise.
I'm not a fan of Melton Mowbray pork pies, I have to say. My daughter absolutely adores them, but I'm
with her.
Yeah, but yeah.
And the more I
have driven around Melton Mowbray, the only time in my life I've been there, and couldn't find anywhere to buy them.
Yeah, you told me that, but I asked right at the beginning. I said, a friend of mine's told me there's no way you can get pork pie, and they said it's second on the left. So
I should have asked Jamie Vardy. What a brilliant way to go again. Everton. Jamie Vardy, what a brilliant way to go.
And what he does next, he will have the pick of a lot of things to do. When we'd spoken, I'm not being secretive about this, there was nothing to say about it. He was waiting, listening to offers, and just to have the chance to say, how did you do it?
Someone asked me this weekend, I can't remember who it was it my son? Someone asked me, would you sign him for a year at Chelsea to vie with Jackson for centre forward and offer him European football?
Whatever he does, he's is nearer 40, isn't he, than 35?
I think he's nearer 40 than 37.
Yes. Anyway, I think the role of an impact sub, now we have all these extra substitutions, and we have had for a while now, to come on, to have Jamie Vardy coming at you in the last 20 minutes of games for tiring defenders would be a way of doing it. But I'm sure he wants to play from the start. Everybody does. And we'll see. Whatever, Jamie, thank you for allowing me time in your company. Thank you, Leicester City, for asking me. And whatever is next for JV9 is going to be worth waiting for, I think.
I've got two players this week, of course. Bruno Fernandes. At Stamford Bridge, Manchester United, the Friday before the cup final, the night before the cup final, were woeful, if only a little less woeful than Chelsea. They played 3-4-2-1 in the Amorim style, and you'd expect Fernandes to be one of the two number 10s in that, but Mason Mount's fit again. And so he played in central midfield next to Casemiro. That meant he came up most of the time against World Cup winner Enzo Fernandez. No relation, and indeed name spelt slightly differently, and different nationality. I don't like Bruno Fernandes. I'm a Chelsea man. I'm not going to like someone like Bruno Fernandes. He was absolutely, unbelievably brilliant. I cannot overstress how he outplayed Enzo Fernandez and how absolutely brilliant he was. His passing was short, long, didn't make any difference. But what it was quick, it was crisp. It was full of vision, pictures in his head the whole time. I cannot believe what an outstanding performance it was. It had everything for a midfield player. And I only think of him as a number 10 who can make the difference. But this was a top number 8 performance of the highest quality. He's a player. He is a player. And not many others, if any, at Manchester United at the moment are. But he put in a performance that was truly convincing. My other player, because I'm sticking with Crystal Palace, is Chris Richards. Now, I followed Chris Richards from before most people in England would have done, because I had a radio show in America, and I knew he was in the academy at Bayern Munich, and every time he was playing for Bayern Munich, I'd turn on the telly and watch. And he didn't do badly when he played for them. He went out on loan to Hoffenheim, and he did pretty well. And he looked a prospect. He got into the USA squad and into the team, and he was looking a player. And Crystal Palace bought him in 2022. really, he was looking like he was going to be the fourth centre-back in the squad. They had Anderson, who they'd signed from Fulham. They had Gahey, who they'd signed from Chelsea. They had still there James Tompkins, who had come from West Ham years before. And it looked like he was going to be the fourth choice. And somewhere around the end of Roy Hodgson, the beginning of Oliver Glasner, he started playing in midfield. And that's because he had pace, he had commitment, he had drive, but he was only okay. And he wasn't getting much of a look in at the back, and he was making mistakes. And then at the beginning, or last summer, Anderson went back to Fulham. And I thought, maybe he's going to get a chance now. But they signed Lacroix, the French player who played in the centre of the back three at Wembley. And they signed Trevor Chalobah on loan from Chelsea. And Chalobah got into the team pretty quickly and did well, so well that an embarrassed Chelsea had to cut short his loan and ask him back in January to come and be a mainstay of the defence thereafter. And it was only then that Chris Richards really became a regular first teamer at Palace. So in his first 6 months or 5 months of regular first team football, he's been a part of the only trophy win of their history. And he has been outstanding. And I've interviewed him before now, and he's typical of that American, articulate, confident, intelligent, mature interview that so many of that Tyler Adams in the World Cup was the absolute perfection of now at Bournemouth. And he comes across as a very bright, no longer boy. He's a man now. He's in his mid-20s, and it's taken him a long time. And it's difficult, when his schoolboy years were in the States, and really the training there is too often to do with profit, dare I say, after all we said about American owners of football clubs over here, and not to do with development, because you want to win, and therefore you get the big boys in, and that's how it works. He's come through what was probably not an easy start, got to Bayern Munich, where he was never really going to break through, but he's become a mid-20s absolute cast-iron Premier League defender and a trophy winner. What a journey. Brilliant.
He was marvellous at Wembley. Marvellous. When it started the second half, when they started to get down the flanks a little bit, Savinho had a good start to the second half for City, and the crosses came in, and there were so many crosses in that period, right up to the 10 minutes of added time, where the ball was finally just dropped into the box, but Erling Haaland never got a sniff. And Chris, and the number of times I said, Chris Richards, it's Richards who gets it. He's quite recognisable as a player, which is very helpful for the commentators. But he won so many little moments that you wouldn't think were decisive, but they were actually. He was brilliant, as they pretty much were. We started with Palace, and it's quite appropriate that we finish with them as well. On Bruno Fernandes, I know some very reputable members of the Football Writers Association who believed that he should have got their Player of the Year, their Football of the Year. And when you think of what United have done, that would be quite an accolade, wouldn't it, for somebody in such a struggling side. But maybe we're holding up a trophy, as we say. We don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I wonder if a club will be looking at Oliver Glasner for when the losers.
No, he's got a European journey to go on with Palace. They were all singing it as I walked back to my car. We're all going on a European tour. And they made it sound like a pub crawl.
It will be. I'll be with them in spirit. Can I just say that in the West Ham Nottingham Forest game, there were 16 minutes of stoppage time. In the Arsenal-Newcastle game, at the end of the first half, almost unheard of in the Premier League.
Blew on the dot, didn't they?
No minutes of stoppage time. This is the joy of football, and we're not having stoppage time. From Martin and me.
See ya.
Ta-ra. There you go. We finished with two what we like to consider favourites after 3 or 4 of different approaches. Listen, obviously, if you like us, subscribe. But if you want to get more involved with us, go onto the Patreon. Don't forget you can read our writings on substack.com, The Joy of Football on that. But listen, drop us a comment and we will every so often respond afterwards on one of our podcasts. It's getting to the end of the season. I'm getting a bit worried about what we're going to do during the summer.
We're going to do the joy of football.
Oh, yes.